Welcome to the 2018 World Chess Championship between the current world champion, Magnus Carlsen, and his American challenger, Fabiano Caruana. The venue is the historic building of the college in downtown London. It's a 12-game match, and today is Game 8. I'm Anna Rudolph, and I'm going to be your host. Our chess expert is once again the greatest female player of all time, Judith Polgar.
Hi.
Judith, we have seen an amazing footage with a hint at the very end. Can you explain what happened in the video?
Actually, the location is very nice, and we are surrounded with all kinds of fantastic named streets, like Fisher Street and Kingsway, and just next door is the Sicilian Avenue as well, which, of course, I was very glad to walk through, as all my life I was a Sicilian player, with both colors, actually.
And today, Fabiano Caruana has the white pieces in Game 8. In his previous 3 games, when he started with white, he went for 1e4, and we saw the Sicilian defense on the board. Do you expect the same opening for today?
I have the feeling that it's a great chance that Fabiano will start with another move in move 1. Maybe
surprise.
D4. Or if he starts with e4, I can't imagine that we would see something else than the Sicilian again.
So it could be the Sicilian Avenue, the Sicilian defense. If it's the Sicilian defense, are you expecting the Rossolimo variation?
Well, to be honest, yes. Sorry.
For the first time.
I wish it would be an open Sicilian and something really interesting, tactical, sharp. But I'm not sure. I just have my hope for that.
As we mentioned, today is already Game 8. So far, we have seen 7 draws. All 7 games were very exciting, fighting chess with chances for both players. Which games do you think Magnus is regretting the most? Clearly hinting at Game 1.
Yeah, it's no question about it. I think, first of all, we haven't seen too many chances for the players in this World Championship because they are very careful, both of them. Game 1 was obviously the game where Magnus could have took the lead immediately. And ever since, he didn't have a single chance to do so, practically. I mean, any serious chance that we could be talking about. And Fabiano had a chance, a principal chance, and he created something very special in Game 6. A great opportunity, which is considered by most of the top players that it's impossible to find it for human beings, the maneuver he could have won with, which I would think if he would have time and the belief that the position can be winning, because this was, I think, the turning point for Fabiano, that you could see it on the screen when he kind of gave up that it's a fortress and I don't have a win. And then when Carlsen blundered, he didn't even believe that there is a way that he can win that game. So actually we had 2 chances for both players, 1 chance in the match. And I'm sure it's getting very, very stressful now because it's not normal to have so many draws for those players. Usually they're accustomed to it, that they win at least a game.
Indeed, and only 5 games remain. With each and every game that ends in a draw, we are getting closer to the finish, which makes the value of the rest of the games even more important. 1 victory could decide this title.
Absolutely, and I think this is also why both players are quite careful and cautious on the road. What openings to choose, what kind of decisions to make, what kind of risk to do. And I think they have huge respect for each other. That's also one of the reasons why the matches unfolded this way, that whenever any of the players plays a move which can be said it's dubious or suspicious, they more think that if he did it, then it must be something really serious behind it. So this also, I think, takes a big role in this match, that not only Fabiano has respect for Magnus, but at least I have the feeling that Magnus has at least as much respect towards Fabiano in his understanding of chess and from the point of view how dangerous he can be if he gets a chance which he believes he can convert to victory.
That is indeed the case. Magnus himself said yesterday at the press conference about Fabiano, Fabiano is an extremely strong player. I expect him to play very well. And that was Magnus talking about why is it that there are only very few mistakes during this match. But let's just remind everyone, this is the world number 1 against the world number 2 facing each other. It's the biggest challenge in Magnus Carlsen's life. There's only 3 rating points dividing the 2 players. And if Fabiano wins the game, he's going to become world number 1.
Yeah, it's kind of a very exceptional situation what we are having here, this World Championship match, that one game could really do a lot of harm to the other one, because it's not only that you win a game, but suddenly in a fraction of a second you take over the lead over the world ranking. And we know very well that how much Magnus cares about that. And actually he was already a few years number 1. I think before he became world champion.
Indeed, he has been sitting on the top of the world rating standings for 8 years, 7.5 years to be more exact, and for 5 years he has been holding on to the world title. But as he mentioned, yes, before he won the world championship match against Vishy Anand in 2013, he already felt like he was the strongest player in the world since he had the highest rating. And now both are at stake, the world number 1 spot and the world champion's crown.
Yes, it is a very unique moment, I think, for both of their life. I think that for Magnus is kind of struggling with himself because he's sitting there ready for so long. But lately, he must have felt that Fabiano is really getting closer. So it's not clear how close is he going to get or surpass him in rating if he would score and he will finish plus score in the World Championship match. So it is a very unique situation.
And Magnus knows that Fabiano has had the best chess year of his life this year. Basically, he won every single super tournament. His only weak spot was the Vaikanzi Tata Steel Super Tournament in January. Ever since, he kept on winning tournament after tournament, not just the Candidates Tournament where he qualified to become the challenger, but every single other elite tournament ahead of Magnus Carlsen, which was already frustrating for Magnus. For instance, in Norway chess, where Magnus won his game against Fabiano.
In a fantastic manner, I must say.
Indeed, he won the game, but the tournament was won by Fabiano, even after the defeat in the first round against Magnus.
Yeah, I remember following that game live, and I was very impressed the way Magnus practically killed Fabiano in that game. It was exceptional, pawn sacrifice, positional, combining all kind of skills what Magnus has. So I even thought that it's quite painful to know that you're the challenger and somebody is just outplaying this way. But he gave his revenge, right? That he lost that game but won the tournament. And this is how it's going on in this year with them. So it was very clear that Fabiano had quite a few problems against Magnus. This was probably quite a headache for Fabiano, that even though he's performing better in all result in tournaments, but on the one-on-one games, he was having troubles.
He said it also in the podcast, the interview he gave to 2 of his best friends. Sjakksnakk, I believe, is the Norwegian title, Chess Talk. It was recorded for NRK. So if you speak Norwegian, do check it out. And the translation can be found of this very insightful interview on Tarjei Svensson's Twitter profile. But basically, in that interview, Magnus mentioned this, that what will matter at this match, he doesn't know, because the personal score, the head-to-head score against Fabiano, he's got great results, but Fabiano has had the better tournament results. And what will matter more here in London, nobody could tell, and I think the players still can't know.
Yes, it depends, of course, the preparation. That was a big issue, how the opening preparation will work out. That is something always extremely important. But, of course, Magnus understood that from sportive aspect, Fabiano has all the character traits and all the being very cool at the board and outside of the board also, which secures him a great result this year. And this is something, this character trait, that you're very calm and you can get over in defeats and difficulties. This is essential, not only in a tournament, but in a match too.
Before we turn our attention to today's game, let's see what our spectators thought about yesterday.
I thought that Carlsen had the edge, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I'm not at all disappointed about the result because I find it very interesting and it was very sharp.
I thought it was another in a series of very tense draws that's been happening in the match so far.
I hope I see a victory, but if not, it's okay too. They fight very sharp.
Carlsen has been very dominant for a long time, and now he's not.
I love the venue. I love the store. I love being here with all the people who love chess.
I think it was great. I think I would repeat. It's my first time here in a chess tournament and I like it. Yes.
We had a couple of good games of Blitz in the games room.
It was very cool with all the chess things and stuff like that.
I think Judith Polgar as well, to have her commentating is pretty special.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This is a really nice venue, a lot of things to do, even if you're not right in the activity room. But once you're in there, it's really nice to be able to see the players, and it's also very nice for them to be behind the glass where it's quiet.
You know, I've seen a lot of these players and commentators on YouTube just like countless times, and then, you know, when you see them in the flesh, it's a good feeling.
Well, I don't know. It's been pretty close. I mean, in the first round, it was super close, and then the round before. So I think Caruana has good chances tomorrow, with White especially.
If you look at their ratings, 3 rating points out of 2,800 and whatever separates them. So actually, statistically speaking, the most likely outcome for the match is draws all the way, in which case it goes to Carlsen's home ground, to a certain extent, rapid play.
Oh, that's a really hard question. I'm half Norwegian, so like my fatherland wants me to, root for Carlsen. But then, as an American, it's really exciting to see Caruana.
Caruana, yeah.
Caruana, although both of them are brilliant.
Magnus. But I think I just want a good match, actually. So whoever wins, may the best guy win.
Magnus.
Magnus.
I think if anyone wins, it's going to be Carlsen, but I'm not sure when.
Fabiano, I hope.
Yeah, the same, Papi.
Carlsen.
I hope Caruana will win.
We'll have a battle afterwards.
I liked the most that kind of like it was like an equal game.
Oh my, I'm melting. What an adorable visitor.
But actually, we have quite a few kids already before the start of the game. Whenever I come by earlier as well, and I see in this room a lot of kids playing chess, it's heartwarming to see them, that they are enthusiastically, passionately, they are playing their games already.
I think we might invite some of the youngest visitors today here in the studio, as well as our VIP guests. So we shall see if we get some help. As yesterday, Shez was helping us analyze Shrez. He's a prodigy, an English prodigy, who made the first move yesterday. And he was really good at analysis.
Yes,
he was holding his own.
Yeah.
I was just going to highlight a tweet that I read yesterday night, and it is by another very strong chess player, world number 5, Anish Giri. He tweeted, "Nonsense aside, good result for Fabi to get 2 potentially tough consecutive black games behind him. Time to ask the boys if there's finally any news in the Rossolimo." Do you think we will see some news in the Rossolimo? We have 4 minutes to the start.
We have great chance to see some news in the Rossolimo, I think.
And the Sicilian Avenue.
Yeah.
The players are arriving in their soundproof box. Not yet. I thought they were arriving, but they still have 4 minutes to the
But actually, they are
shake.
already in the building, so we
Yes.
know that they have to arrive at least 10 minutes before the start of the game.
And they need to go through a very strict security check. You would be surprised that here all the measures are about just making sure that no one even considers the possibility of cheating. So they go through the usual airport scanning, plus the playing venue is checked every single day.
Actually, I heard from the arbiters that it's a much more serious scanning than in the airports.
Ooh.
Because, of course, people, they are scanning for technical devices which can possibly give any side hints to the players, because that's basically the main issue in chess, that if you would have a help any point of the game, even only one time when you're thinking in a crucial position how to decide, it could make a difference. But I do believe that it's in this World Championship we are seeing two really big gentlemen playing against each other, and they really want to fight it out over the board. But they don't even have a chance otherwise. I mean, even to have anything electrical, because I just saw the other day that they are really checking the whole room before the game, 1 hour before the game. They are really checking every little details, the chairs, floors, every part of the playing venue. So they make sure that there is not a possibility for that.
And the scanning is done by not just anyone, but one of the oldest detective agencies in the world, Pinkerton, who is a partner of the World Chess Championship. So we thank them for the service. And as you mentioned, we see two gentlemen fighting against each other. It also seemed that Magnus Carlsen, when he got a bit of a confidential information from a video that was published, not on purpose, about Fabiano's training camps, he didn't use it in the next games.
Well, yeah, this is the feeling you have, that it's not clear that those informations, and how it affected both of the players. And it was a very sensitive topic after Game 4, so that was quite an interesting part of the match. And we see the players already being ready for Game 8. Within seconds, minutes, within 2 minutes, right, the clocks will be starting.
And the big question is whether Fabiano Caruana will make one e4 as his first move. Our special guest today, you might recognize him from yesterday. He was here with us in the studio. He's the co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, Mr. Demis Hassabis. He has been nicknamed as the superhero of artificial intelligence by The Guardian, and he's one of the brightest minds in the world. He will make the first move for Fabiano Caruana.
Actually, he's a chess player himself. He was a chess prodigy, so I'm sure it's a special moment for him as well to be ready for move 1.
What do you think will be the first move, Judith? E4? D4?
D4.
D4? I'm rooting for D4, but I'm afraid it's going to be E4. Let's make a very quick poll among our live audience before Mr. Hassabis makes the first move. Do you think it's going to be E4? Can you please raise your hands if you think it's going to be one E4? All right, thank you so much. What about one D4? Who thinks it's going to be one D4? I see less votes for one D4. Anything else? Third option? No, E4 is on the board side. Live audience is, of course, right again, as usual. Thank you so much for participating in the broadcast.
So we have move E4.
And the Sicilian Avenue.
I doubt that we would see anything else. I would really be surprised. It cannot be anything else than C5.
Has Magnus touched the C pawn? I believe so. We have just got to our other cameras.
The players have to handle all the flashes in the first 5 minutes of the game, because there is a special way of setup how the photographers can make their pictures, which, yes, we have C5 on the board.
Therefore, for the fourth time, the Sicilian defense and the open variation of the Sicilian defense.
Wow.
Judith, no Rossolimos.
Fantastic. I think we should
get
clap for this. Open Spanish. Open Sicilian, yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. So now Magnus has to reveal what is his secret against the open Sicilian. Whether is he going to go to the Sveshnikov, which we were strongly considering that it will be the decision of him, or he's going to go to maybe some sideline, 4 queen b6 here, or he goes to the accelerated dragon. Whether is he going to play g6? That's also interesting. But we have knight f6 on the board. So,
are you predicting the Sveshnikov?
Well, I still would think definitely that he would go for Sveshnikov. What else? Unless he wants to go d6, but I would be really surprised if it's not the Sveshnikov, especially seeing this at the board. And we have the Sveshnikov.
So with the e5 move that Magnus Carlsen has played, we are entering the Sveshnikov variation. This is what Judith predicted. Fabiano's team has had about 2 weeks to prepare this particular variation. They couldn't know if Magnus would play the Sveshnikov or any other type of Sicilian with the second move, knight to c6. So it could have been the Scheveningen as well, for instance. The Sveshnikov was one of the options that they had to consider. And finally, for game 8, they felt like they were ready to face the open Sicilian.
Yes, and black, after d6, black's move, white played 7, knight d5. Which we can see that knight beat db5, d6. This is absolutely the basic position of the Sveshnikov. The main line, the old main line, is bishop g5. There is other move also, bishop e3, but knight d5 is also considered to be one of the very interesting. I was also playing most of the moves here because I had to be facing Sveshnikov quite a lot in my career. And after e takes d5, the knight will be moving to e7, most likely, or b8.
How popular is the variation that Fabiano has chosen?
Well, knight d5 is, there's quite a lot of games on that played, and black played knight b8. In this position. Of course, knight e7 is also a move which is played quite frequently. But knight b8, the idea is, it looks very strange for the moment that all the black pieces seems to be on the back rank, but black will be developing his pieces to d7 and then later on the bishop as well.
Judith, we are going to receive some help to understand today's game. We are so glad that Mr. Demis Hassabis has returned to our studio. Welcome back, Demis.
Good to be back. Hi, Judith.
The co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, as we discussed already. And if you were not here with us yesterday, I don't know what you were doing, because you missed a very insightful conversation with one of the brightest minds in the world. We started out with AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero, and today we will discuss further topics about artificial intelligence and chess as well.
Yeah, it was great to be here and great to do the first move, because it was really interesting feeling the intensity in the room.
Tell us about, can you describe how does it feel?
Well, it's quite amazing energy in the room. So you go inside and obviously they're super concentrating, and it was quite, it's quite an interesting experience on that side of the glass, and feeling it's a little bit almost claustrophobic inside. It feels like the room's not big enough to contain the energy of the two players.
Did you expect e4, or did you think that Fabiano would tell you something else?
No, I wasn't sure what he was going to do, actually, but I'm pleased to see the Sveshnikov, because I play this for black. So it was quite a coincidence it was this match that I got to do the first move on. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out.
Then we will definitely ask for your expert advice. And as mentioned, we are going to discuss further topics about artificial intelligences. Yesterday, we were just so sorry when we had to say goodbye to you. And we thought with Judith that there are so many other fascinating topics about artificial intelligence that we wanted to have you here for hours. Right. So thank you so much for coming back, so that we can ask you more about AI. And the first topic I wanted to discuss was how differently AlphaZero is thinking, for instance, about the game of chess, if we compare it to humans and if we compare it to computers, engines.
Well, there's quite interesting comparisons. So you can look. I think there's two interesting things to say about that. One is how many moves do these chess engines calculate per decision? And of course, human grandmasters maybe look at maybe 100 moves, something like that order, to be able to make a decision. And something like Stockfish, traditional chess engines, they make 10 million. They look at 10 million moves before they make a decision. And AlphaZero is somewhere in between. So it looks at only 10,000 moves before it makes a decision. So it's not as efficient as human decision-making, but it's much more efficient than traditional engines. It has to look at a lot less moves because it's better at evaluating positions. And then the second thing that's interesting about it is because it doesn't have inbuilt rules, it doesn't even have rules like a queen is 9 points, rook is 5 points. It doesn't know anything about those piece values. So it assesses everything in the context of the current position. So we speculate that it's much easier for it to make long-term sacrifices, for example, because it doesn't have to overcome its inbuilt programming to say it's going to sacrifice for an exchange. an engine like Stockfish would have to calculate that it's going to get enough in return for that 2 points difference. Whereas AlphaZero doesn't have that rule inbuilt, so it can just decide, well, look, the rook is an asset, the knight is an asset. In this current position, that knight is a stronger asset for the opponent than my rook, and it can make the sacrifice, even if it can't calculate explicitly that it's going to get enough compensation. It can just sort of decide contextually in these kinds of positions that exchange is worthwhile.
But still, how does he make a difference between knight and rook if he doesn't know that the rook worth more?
Well, this is the interesting thing. I guess it's learned over the millions of games of playing against itself that the knight is generally less
it will
worth
give a better
less than the rook.
outcome
It will
at the
give you a
end.
better outcome over the whole experience. But what it can do is, in the context of this particular position, it can make a decision to make the sacrifice. And it's easier for, of course, Stockfish can do that too, but it would need to calculate quite carefully that it's going to get enough in return to overcome this inbuilt rule that you're losing 2 points.
Does AlphaZero has intuition?
Well, I think it is sort of like a very intuitive player. It does it. I think it's more sort of by feel in effect, because it's sort of taking the pattern of the current board, and then it's deciding, that this is worthwhile. But it's not necessarily explicitly calculating out. So it's more akin to something like intuition in terms of human terms. Although, of course, it doesn't know anything about intuition or any of these terms we're using. It's just a computer. But I think it's more like that. And I think that comes out in the style of the play. It really likes sacrifices. It's very positional, I would say, very strong.
And how many moves in a head does it calculate, if it does?
So it can calculate quite deep lines if it needs to, but it only looks at 10,000 moves per decision. So it's quite a lot compared to a human player, but it's much, much less than you're used to for chess engines, which is millions of moves. So in order to compensate for that less amount of calculation, it has to have better evaluation.
And what makes a difference that how deeply he goes into certain lines?
It depends.
Like we have strategic positional lines and we have tactical.
Yeah.
Does it understand that in tactical line you really have to go all the way?
No, not explicitly. So in chess engines, they have this extra calculation. They know if it's an imbalanced position, they should calculate more. There's special rules for that as well. Yeah. But no, AlphaZero doesn't have anything explicit about that. If it feels that a certain line is unresolved, it doesn't quite know what's happening, it could search more there. So there is some implicit way it does that, but not in the explicit way that chess engines do. So this is something very interesting for us. We've only just built the system, so the next stage over the next year is to try and reverse engineer it to see how it's making its decisions. At the moment, it's more like a black box. So it makes these decisions, but I would like to know, for example, what does it rate a rook and a knight overall? We don't actually know. And it doesn't express, that's why it doesn't express its evaluation in terms of pawns. Like chess engines do. It expresses it in terms of percentage chance of winning.
I found really fascinating the long-term positional sacrifices. I saw some of the games that AlphaZero played against Stockfish. I'm sure that many of our viewers actually have seen those games. So we are referring to the match that AlphaZero played last December against Stockfish, the world champion of chess engines. And AlphaZero not only won the match very convincingly, but he came up with these sacrifices that you mentioned. Not just the positional sacrifices we are used to in human games, which would be a pawn sacrifice, but he went on sacrificing a bishop, a knight, for something very long-term, not a calculation in terms of there would be a tactical reward for his sacrifice 10, 20 moves later. Yeah. And then there was another move that I really loved, a queen move, queen h1, that I felt like we are learning something from this AI, because that's neither a human move nor an engine move.
No, exactly. There were a lot of, I think, examples, and I think people were surprised by, not only was it strong, but it was making very unusual moves that were kind of alien. They weren't, as you say, they weren't really the kind of moves a computer engine would do. And I hope that's going to give strong chess players new ideas, and maybe usher in a new era of creativity, because I think it's a very interesting style. And we're going to release a lot more games, and then I think people can see even further what this style is. And one thing it really favors is mobility. So it really likes mobility and optionality for its pieces. And it likes restricting the mobility of the opponent, including using rooks, especially rooks on outposts, very advanced outposts, which are quite unusual as far as I've seen in chess.
It's a new term to learn for us as well, rooks on outpost. We talk about knights on outpost, but it's really the case that happened with Go as well. When the world champion of Go, Lee Sedol, he learned from the games that he played in his 5-game match against AlphaGo. And then he came up with this brilliant idea in game 4 of the match. So if that happens in chess too, that would be amazing for all the top players, that they are learning a new way of thinking from AlphaZero.
I would love to see that happen. And we had a couple of very strong chess players come in and have a look at some of the games and help us analyze them. And one thing they told me that really stuck in my mind is it felt to them that the board was much bigger somehow. And I think people will see that when they see the games. It kind of plays on one wing, creates a few weaknesses, then it switches all its pieces over to another wing, and then makes more weaknesses, and then finally goes back. And then now there's the other, your opponent's position collapses because now there's a few too many little bits of weaknesses. And it's very interesting how it controls that situation. So I think people are going to find some of these newer games with an even stronger version of AlphaZero quite fascinating, I hope.
I believe it was former world champion Garry Kasparov who said that IBM's Deep Blue basically caused the end of an era, but AlphaZero is the beginning.
I hope so. I mean, it's very kind of him to say so, and I think Garry has spent a lot of time thinking about computer chess, and of course he was right in the middle of the biggest moment of all. And it's been very fascinating talking to him about that. And of course, I think what he meant was he realized that we're building these general systems not only to just learn all types of different games, including chess, but potentially eventually to apply it to real-world problems in science and medicine. And there's no reason why these AlphaZero type techniques, they're not built specifically for chess. It just learns it for itself. And these techniques could be used for other complex domains that in the real world.
Is the way AlphaZero is learning similar to how humans learn? I believe that you're using neuroscience in order to see how the brain works. And I was curious, for instance, when we learn anything as humans, it has to be somewhat more difficult than the level we know so that it stimulates, but it shouldn't be too difficult because that would discourage us and maybe we would just stop trying. Is it similar in the case of AlphaZero?
Yes, it is, and that's why what we do is we play AlphaZero against itself or the previous version of itself, so it's always at exactly the right level for it to improve, to learn from by beating its older version, but not so much stronger that it would have no chance and therefore not be able to have any learning signal at all. So you're exactly right. You need to make sure that the learning experience is at the right level, but if you have it against itself, you kind of get that automatically, the right balance. And if it can't beat its old version, then it needs to continue playing. The current version needs to continue playing until eventually it has enough experience that you can now move it up a level.
If you needed to rate the level of AlphaZero in terms of rating points, what do you think it would be about?
It's pretty tricky. We haven't done this formally, but I would guess that from the results I've seen, it's around probably 3,600, something like that, if you would guess. So, but that's not an official rating. It's just a guess currently. We would need to play under tournament conditions to know for sure.
Yeah, it's just about a couple of 100 points above the world champion. How do you see today's game if we are talking about Magnus already? As you mentioned that the Sveshnikov was one of your favorite openings. Yes. Let's just remind everyone that Mr. Hassabis was a chess prodigy. He was world number 2 under 14, and the world number 1 in the under 14 category was the lady next to me, Judith Polgar.
Yes.
It's good that chess can reunite you two after the youth events.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was quite fun when we talked about it a few days ago.
Do you remember each other from those children's tournaments?
Judith. I don't think Judith remembers me, but I remember Judith from seeing her far away on the top boards in the big tournaments.
It was here in England.
Yeah, it was here in England in Hastings. So
the world famous
Hastings
tournament.
International. Yeah, which Judith won. So it was incredible. We didn't actually play each other when we were young, so I'm trying to persuade Judith to have a few games in private. We'll see.
I think that's a great idea, and once again, I think, Judith, you should credit yourself for everything that Demis has achieved, because you made him quit chess and get into computer engineering, and we do appreciate it.
Exactly. So we have to credit Judith with AlphaZero now. So it's down to you.
For the future of humankind, it was worth it. How do you see the game so far? As you know, it's opening very well from the black side, and Judith played it from the white side, so we can have you two analyze the position.
What do you think, Judith,
well, actually, I think we should go back just a few minutes to catch up what happened in the last few moves. as white played a4, which is actually c4 is much more common. I'm pretty sure when you were playing it, almost everybody was playing c4.
Absolutely.
But a4 is also kind of a good option. And black played bishop e7, which is the most natural of developing the pieces. Bishop e2, this is quite logical follow-up. Castles, castles, black played knight d7. This was the idea of knight b8, to have the knight on d7 and later on probably going to f6. And now it's interesting that, that Fabiano immediately made a surprise to Magnus, because the most common moves are in the logical, it's either king f1 for a later preparation of later f4, and the other one is bishop e3. I think I played it also. But bishop d2 is on the board. And you can see of Magnus that he's surprised, and I'm sure he's not happy that he's the one who got the surprise first. And there were only 4 games on this.
See that our website is suggesting, sorry that I interrupted you, both of you at the same time. World Chess also has some statements about the game, and now the statement I can see is that 12 bishop d2 is very rare, and it quotes a game, Oparin Gelfand. That must be one of the 4 that you mentioned, Judith.
Yes, Oparin Gelfand was one of the game, and actually White won the game pretty easily. The game went with a6. White played knight a3. This is the move to play, and then to play knight c4. This is White is waiting for a6 to the b6 square.
Is the idea of bishop d2 is to go bishop b4 and maybe pressurize
I'm still
b6?
Trying to figure out what's the idea. I think generally, for example, here after knight a3, a5 is possible. But also that after knight c4, for example, here black played a5, and then white played knight c4, b6, and then white played f4. Which is kind of strange, right? Because the bishop will be taking on f4 in 2 moves.
Yeah. Magnus did not bother pushing a6, but went f5 instead.
Yeah, that's the normal kind of plan in these positions, f5.
Yeah, f5 is the most, well...
And then queen e8 and these things, but a6 after a6.
Yeah, well, it's always a question, right, for black, whether to play a6 now or later, or can you wait for playing that?
a5 is on the board.
So actually it's very simple. Now I understand why bishop d2, because if now a6, then white can still go knight a3, and the a5 pawn is protected. So this is the clear idea, because it's very important for white to bring his knight over to c4. And it's not that he's going back to c3. That would be kind of a drawback.
So usually in these kind of positions, you try and get, I used to like these positions from black, so you try and get some kind of kingside attack with queen e8, queen g6, these kind of things. Do you think that's feasible in this position?
So I feel it that you're an attacker. We are on the same side of the in chess. Well,
I'll just stay quiet here with my rook end games.
Well, probably knight f6, then bishop e3 could be an interesting idea, I think. And immediately a very crucial moment arises, as the a7 pawn is under attack. The only move is, if you want to save the pawn, is a6, and then bishop b6 with the intermediate move. And now black is in trouble, because queen e8 is still far away from the attack, but losing a rook. And if queen d7, then white goes knight c7, attacking the rook, and possibly knight e6 immediately. This looks pretty annoying for black, I think.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because somehow black's pieces does not have really... I mean, look at this. If after rook e8, you cannot move with your bishop, you cannot move with your queen.
This is a mess.
This is not something...
This is how not to play chess.
Yeah, this is not something Magnus will be looking forward. But I think after knight f6, bishop e3 is the move. Actually, it's a little bit similar. There are King's Indian. I don't know, were you a King's Indian player?
No, I was not King's Indian player, no. No.
I was with black. And, okay. And but if you like queen e8 and queen g6, give mates.
I know the King's Indian would have been exactly.
You retired from chess before you had your best games.
Now it's time for that moment in the VIP area. I'm really looking forward to the match between you two. Mentioning openings, just if you can tell us about AlphaZero and the openings that it prefers, because some openings are supposed to be somewhat objectively better than others.
Well, what's quite interesting is we have this analysis that we're going to release about different stages of its evolution. As it gets stronger, it favors different openings. So, you sometimes see, I don't know, the French defense or something like that being quite popular early. And then as it gets stronger, it doesn't play that anymore. And
Don't tell me.
So I can't remember exactly, so I don't want to pick out the French defense, but you'll have to look for your own favorite openings and see. But in the end, with white, it settled on d4. I think it likes d4. And so it has certain favorites as it nears the end of its training. But if potentially we trained it further, and we could, it might change again. So it's very interesting seeing the evolution of the openings. Of course, it does like the things like the Berlin defense. It kind of rediscovered that for itself as being, a good equalizing tool for black. So
what a pity.
What a pity. Decades ago.
I know, it's a shame. Maybe we should ban it from playing the Berlin. But so I think Kramnik was onto something when he introduced that.
Can't you tell to AlphaZero to figure out something in the King's Indian?
Well, we
get some new ideas there.
It likes playing against the Queen's Indian a lot. It's sort of its favourite. And we released a few of the games were nice wins against the Queen's Indian. So we'll see if it maybe changes some opening theory. I don't know when it comes out.
I would be curious to see that. How much do you think that the top players care about AlphaZero's opening choice, and if they can rely on AI in their preparation?
Well, I think from what I can tell, and I've talked to the seconds of both Magnus and Fabi, they use engines as both of them, I think, as an integral part of their preparation. So I imagine, there is an AlphaZero clone called Leela, an open source one that's out there. It's not as strong as AlphaZero, but it's pretty strong. And because it plays so differently to the other chess engines, even though it's not as strong as Stockfish, I think it's interesting for them to include in their mix of engines, because it might come up with a different idea in a certain position. So I'm interested to see when they see, they haven't seen enough games yet from AlphaZero, I think, to affect opening preparation. But if they see a few hundred more, then maybe that would change some thinking.
And LilaZero, you can all try out LilaZero. We discussed this, that it's an open source AI, but it develops much slower than AlphaZero, as far as I know, since it relies on basically the computer of volunteers.
Yes.
And AlphaZero, how complex and how strong is the computer system behind AlphaZero where you train it?
Yeah, so actually, there's some bit of misnomers out there about this, is that we use a lot of computers to do the training, but once it's finished training, so we use maybe like 1,000 computers on the cloud, but then once we've trained it, it only uses a single machine. It's quite a powerful one. It's the equivalent of having 2 or 3 very powerful game GPUs. We use this thing called a TPU, which is a special type of AI piece of hardware, but it's not a supercomputer or anything like that. And actually, if we use it on a normal GPU, it probably only loses about 100 elo. So it's not. It's still very competitive.
Well, it has so much that
yes.
It doesn't matter.
So I think there's a lot of room for optimizing that. And the interesting question for me is, maybe we'll do this experiment of letting it continue to learn. What's the highest level that chess can be played at? So I think it's an interesting question all chess players are interested in.
We certainly are. Yeah. Do you have plans about this? As you mentioned already, that the point here is that you are using AlphaZero and the games as a testing field. That's where they can train. But the objective is to solve intelligence and then use it for solving real-world problems. Are you already moving in that direction? If you can tell us about the new projects.
There's still loads of things to be solved in AI. We don't know how to make abstract knowledge. We don't know how to use language yet with these systems, understand language. So there's a lot of big breakthroughs needed before we have general artificial intelligence, human-level AI. But even our relatively nascent systems, they can do quite impressive things now, like play chess, play Go. And so they can already, we think, be applied to interesting problems in science and medicine that are reasonably constrained, but are too hard for human experts right now to solve on their own.
That is fascinating. Judith, I see you are looking at the board at the same time. Have we missed something after A5?
We have a move A6.
A6.
Okay.
A6, yeah.
Before it was too late. Knight
Yeah,
A3.
and white played knight A3, and actually Fabiano is taking quite a significant time advantage by now. He increased his time, Fabiano, during the first few moves. So the initial time was 140, now he's 143, while Magnus is around 120. Maybe he has 122 or something like that. So it's very clear that Fabiano is in his book very clearly, probably for quite some time. And actually the position we looked before F5, when we looked at the Gelfand game, who is an expert in this, let's face it, he was afraid at the board of A5 because he played A5 and A6 and A5 after that. So it will be interesting how... Actually, there was a sharp pawn sacrifice before for Magnus to give what we were looking before if knight F6 would be the move. Then bishop E3 and F4 was a possibility. Not F4, bishop D7, I think. It was a possibility to play with the idea after bishop E3, bishop D7, knight A7. Actually, I was hoping for this because after F4, bishop B6, it has a very similar pattern compared to King's Indian, but there are some more pawns. Queen E8 and then Queen G6, and some kind of attack.
Yeah,
but,
I like those kind of positions.
But of course, when you play against the home preparation, most likely you think that it's not the right moment of the playing it in a World Championship game 8 after 7 draws just to enter into home preparation and have some material down. So somehow it seems Magnus played A6, knight A3, and let's see what he played after knight A3.
I don't see the move yet, but he must have played something. He left the board. Of course, the players can go to the snack area. They have some refreshments in the room next to them. As we mentioned, sorry, Damis. I was just going to mention again that they are playing in a double-layer glass box. It's a soundproof box, and only the arbiters are allowed there. What they see, if they look at the glass, is basically a mirror reflection, and on the other side of the glass, the auditorium, the visitors can be looking at the players. It's a very interesting environment. Damis, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, what you think, Judith, he would have played?
Well, I
Queen
think
E8
I would
or
go,
knight F6? Or?
I would do knight F6. Let's see what he did. Did he play knight F6? I have the feeling he did.
Yes, he's played knight F6.
He did?
I don't know.
I don't see his movie yet. Another layer in the match is when the jackets come off. So the jacket was off before this move, and now it's back.
Back on.
Well, I would go knight F6. I don't know if Magnus did too, but I don't have feedback on that. If knight F6, knight C4, probably bishop D7. And after knight B6, rook B8. Well, of course, this knight on B6 is standing beautifully. And I'm not even sure that it had to play, white has to play immediately knight to B6. Maybe bishop B4 is also an alternative. And only after the bishop is moving away somewhere, then white goes knight B6 and later on C4. It will be a huge battle today. This is what we were waiting for.
And we've been hoping for the Open Sicilian already for days. Rossolimo 3 times, but not the 4th game at least.
But actually now I'm seeing that there are tactics immediately. For example, if white would be playing here bishop b4, what we discussed, actually bishop e8 can be a blunder already because knight e5 is possible, and after taking d6.
Yep.
So that would be a great exchange for white, and probably white would be also gaining the pawn on e5 because it's a double attack. And this is something black will have to watch out during the whole game, I think, of the potential sacrifice on e5 and playing d6.
Magnus doesn't seem to be comfortable at all. It's not just the time pressure and knowing that Fabiano has prepared this, he's blitzing out the moves. The position is not the type of solid strategic battle where you can just make moves on your own. Here, he has to be precise. How do you see the game, Damis?
Yeah, it's very sharp positions. I mean, I like these positions from Black in terms of if you can get an attack going, but if you can't, you're often positionally in real trouble, and your position just collapses. So I think I'm surprised that Magnus has played such a high risk.
E4.
They're playing E4, interesting.
E4. Yeah, the idea is to play knight E5.
Yeah.
So he also has to be sharp. And we're going to have a very concrete game, I think. I mean, now if White would be going knight C4, I think he might even go forward and play F4 also. So F4 is possible from White's side. And then Black has to make a decision whether to take en passant or leave it, which I think e takes F3 would be the right choice. Bishop F3, knight E5. It looks quite okay for Black.
After E4, Fabiano started thinking for the first time during the game. Doesn't mean that he's not in his preparation anymore.
No, it's quite an obvious continuation for Black.
It's very straightforward. He must have checked it,
yeah.
Of course. And it's not the position where you stop analyzing. We were discussing that the players, when they prepare for the match, they, of course, at some point, they should stop their analysis and say that, okay, I can play this at the board, but this is not the kind of position where you want to stop, right?
For sure.
Well,
your prediction, Damis, for today as a result?
That's an interesting one, actually. I like to go for Black win, just for old time's sake.
Great. Black win.
We'll see. I think it will be a decisive game today.
Decisive game.
Yeah, we have a real...
This is quite an interesting game.
Real chance.
Yeah, this is a proper tussle. So.
It's game 8, as in the Carlsen-Karjakin match, so could be crucial, could be a crucial day. Thank you so much for joining us, Damis. I'm looking forward to the match between you two, and then you tell us if you used AlphaZero's help or not. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We shall go for a quick break, and then we are back with game 8 of this very fascinating match.